Have you ever noticed that the loudest moment in a relationship isn't the last argument? It isn't the slammed door, the final goodbye, or the words you wish you could take back. The loudest moment arrives long after all of that, when everything finally becomes quiet. At first, you think the silence is empty, that it's simply the absence of sound. But then something strange begins to happen. The silence starts filling itself. It gathers every unfinished sentence, every uncertain glance, every promise that was never broken but somehow never fulfilled either. It becomes impossible to tell whether you're remembering the past or rewriting it. That's the part nobody prepares you for. Silence doesn't simply remove noise. It changes the way your entire story sounds inside your own mind. Most people believe relationships end because of one unforgettable moment. They imagine there is always a single mistake that explains everything. One decision. One conversation. One irreversible event. Reality rarely feels that simple. Long before people drift apart physically, they begin drifting inside themselves. There are thoughts left unspoken because they seem too small to matter. Feelings postponed because tomorrow always feels like a better time. Tiny disappointments that never become arguments because they never seem important enough to mention. None of those moments feel dangerous while they're happening. They seem harmless precisely because they are ordinary. Yet ordinary things have a strange habit of becoming unforgettable once silence arrives. Memory behaves differently when nothing new replaces it. While life is noisy, the mind barely has time to examine what it has collected. Conversations continue. Responsibilities pile up. New experiences overwrite old emotions before they have a chance to settle. But silence interrupts that rhythm. Suddenly, the mind has room to wander. It returns to places you believed you had already left behind. It doesn't search for answers because answers are satisfying. It searches because uncertainty refuses to disappear on its own. That is why silence often feels heavier than conflict. Conflict provides direction. Even painful conversations have movement. They carry emotion forward. Silence offers no direction at all. It simply leaves space, and the human mind has never been comfortable with empty space. It begins filling the gaps with possibilities, replaying memories from different angles, searching for hidden meanings inside ordinary moments that once seemed insignificant. The same scene repeats again and again until it feels almost unfamiliar, as though you're watching someone else's life unfold while recognizing every detail. Perhaps that's why silence changes people more than dramatic endings ever could. During conflict, attention stays focused on what happened. During silence, attention quietly shifts toward what might have happened instead. The imagination becomes more persuasive than reality because reality has stopped speaking. Every unanswered question begins growing larger than every answer you already possess. Eventually, you stop remembering events exactly as they occurred. You remember how they made you wonder. The strange thing is that silence rarely arrives all at once. It enters quietly, almost politely. At first, it feels temporary, as though the world is simply pausing for a moment before returning to normal. But normal has an unusual habit of disappearing without announcing its departure. One day you realize you've become more familiar with the quiet than with the conversations that came before it. That realization doesn't happen dramatically. It settles in slowly, almost invisibly, until one ordinary morning feels completely different from every morning that came before. People often assume silence is nothing. Yet nothing has extraordinary power over the imagination. Imagine walking into an abandoned house. The furniture may still be there. The walls may remain untouched. Sunlight still enters through the windows exactly as it always did. Yet something essential has disappeared, and its absence changes the meaning of everything else. The empty chair suddenly matters more than the occupied one ever did. The untouched photograph becomes more emotional than the moment it captured. Nothing physically changed, yet everything feels different because presence has quietly transformed into memory. That same transformation happens inside people. When someone becomes part of your daily rhythm, their presence eventually feels ordinary. Not because they matter less, but because the human mind adapts to almost everything it experiences repeatedly. Familiarity softens awareness. You stop noticing details because your brain no longer needs to. Then silence arrives, and awareness returns all at once. Suddenly, tiny details become impossible to ignore. The sound of footsteps in a hallway. A familiar laugh remembered at unexpected moments. A place that somehow feels both unchanged and completely unfamiliar. The world itself hasn't shifted. your attention has. What makes silence so unsettling isn't simply that someone or something is absent. It's that your mind continues expecting presence long after reality has changed. Habits outlive circumstances. Emotional routines survive longer than the relationships that created them. That's why silence often feels confusing before it feels painful. Part of you continues living according to yesterday while another part is slowly realizing yesterday no longer exists. There is another reason silence feels different from every other emotion. It refuses to stay in the present. It constantly pulls your attention backward and forward at the same time. One moment you're remembering something that happened years ago with impossible clarity. The next, you're imagining conversations that will never occur. The mind becomes trapped between memory and imagination, leaving very little room for the reality unfolding directly in front of you. Hours disappear this way. Entire evenings pass while the outside world remains perfectly still and the inside world refuses to rest. The unsettling truth is that silence exposes patterns you never noticed while life was loud. During constant activity, emotions blend together until they become difficult to distinguish. Happiness, frustration, comfort, uncertainty, they all arrive too quickly to examine individually. But silence slows everything down. Feeling separate from one another like dust settling after a storm. Suddenly, emotions you ignored for months become impossible to overlook. Not because they suddenly appeared, but because they were finally given enough room to reveal themselves. Sometimes that realization is uncomfortable. We like believing our biggest emotional turning points arrive dramatically, announced by unmistakable events that leave no room for confusion. Yet many of life's deepest changes happen almost invisibly. They arrive disguised as ordinary days. They hide inside routines that seem completely harmless. Only later, when silence stretches across those memories, do you recognize that something fundamental had already begun changing long before you noticed. And perhaps that is the quiet irony of silence. It doesn't merely reveal what was lost. It reveals what had already been changing beneath the surface while everyone, including you, was distracted by the noise. By the time you finally recognize that change, something even stranger has already begun. The silence is no longer surrounding your memories. It has started reshaping them. Events that once felt ordinary suddenly carry emotional weight you never assigned to them before. A passing glance becomes meaningful. An unfinished conversation begins to feel symbolic. Moments that barely registered while they were happening now seem like they contained warnings you somehow failed to understand. It isn't because the past has changed. It's because distance has changed the way your mind looks at it. That is one of the quiet paradoxes of being human. We rarely experience life in its final form while it is happening. We only discover the true emotional shape of certain moments after enough time has passed for us to lose them. While we're living inside an experience, we're too close to recognize its outline. We see details, but not the pattern. Silence creates that distance. It steps between you and your memories until, for the first time, you can see the entire picture instead of a single brushstroke. The difficult part is that clarity often arrives hand in hand with uncertainty. You begin noticing things you overlooked, but you can never be completely sure whether they were truly there or whether your mind is connecting pieces that were never connected in the first place. Human memory has never been a perfect recording. It is a storyteller. Every time you revisit the past, it quietly edits the script, softens certain scenes, sharpens others, and fills empty spaces with emotion. The more often you return, the more convincing the story becomes, even if it drifts further from what actually happened. That is why silence can feel so persuasive. There is nothing competing with it. No new conversations to interrupt it. No constant movement to redirect your attention. Your own thoughts become the loudest voice in the room, and after enough time, they begin sounding like certainty. Questions slowly transform into conclusions, not because evidence appeared, but because repetition makes almost anything feel familiar. Familiarity has an unusual ability to disguise itself as truth. You start noticing this beyond relationships as well. Entire chapters of your life become defined not by what happened, but by what remained unsaid. Friendships you assumed would always exist slowly become memories without any clear ending. Places that once felt ordinary become strangely emotional simply because you haven't returned. Even parts of your own personality begin to feel distant, as though you are remembering versions of yourself that belong to someone else. Silence doesn't only change how you see other people. It changes how you see the person you used to be. Perhaps that is why revisiting old memories can feel both comforting and unsettling at the same time. They remind you that your life was once different, but they also remind you that the version of yourself who lived those moments no longer exists. We often imagine change as something visible. New jobs. New cities. New faces. But the deepest changes are usually invisible. They happen inside your perspective. One day you realize you no longer react the way you once did. Certain words have lost their power. Certain places no longer feel familiar. Certain dreams no longer belong to you. Nothing dramatic announced that transformation. It happened quietly, one ordinary day after another, until silence finally revealed it. There is something almost unsettling about how the human mind clings to unfinished stories. Endings give us boundaries. They allow memories to settle into place. But experiences without clear endings continue drifting through the mind because there is nowhere for them to rest. They become recurring visitors, appearing without invitation in quiet moments, asking questions they cannot answer. It isn't always the most painful experiences that stay with us the longest. Sometimes it is simply the ones that never found a conclusion. Maybe that explains why silence can feel heavier than loss itself. Loss has shape. Silence does not. Loss tells you that something is over. Silence leaves the door slightly open, not because anyone is waiting on the other side, but because your imagination never learned how to close it. As long as uncertainty exists, the mind continues wandering back toward it, hoping that one more look will finally make everything make sense. But understanding rarely arrives all at once. It comes in small realizations scattered across ordinary days. You hear a familiar melody and discover it no longer hurts the way it once did. You walk past a place filled with memories and notice that your attention keeps moving instead of stopping. You remember a name that once carried overwhelming emotion, and instead of feeling consumed by it, you simply acknowledge that it belongs to another chapter. These moments are so subtle that they almost go unnoticed, yet together they reveal something profound. Silence hasn't only changed your memories. It has changed you. Looking back, you realize the silence was never an empty space waiting to be filled. It was a mirror. Without constant conversation, constant movement, or constant distraction, there was finally nothing left standing between you and your own thoughts. At first, that reflection felt uncomfortable because it revealed questions you had postponed for too long. Then, gradually, it revealed something else. The person searching for certainty had been changing all along. That realization arrives quietly. It doesn't feel like triumph or defeat. It feels like waking from a dream you didn't realize you were having. The memories are still there. The emotions still exist. But they no longer control the entire landscape of your mind. They become part of the scenery rather than the destination. You stop searching every quiet moment for hidden meanings because you begin to understand that not every silence is a puzzle waiting to be solved. Sometimes silence is simply where life gives your thoughts enough room to settle. And perhaps that is the deepest reason silence changes everything. Not because it changes the past, and not because it changes other people, but because it changes the story you tell yourself about what those experiences meant. The events remain exactly where they always were. What shifts is the lens through which you see them. The same memory that once felt like proof of failure can later feel like evidence of growth. The same quiet that once seemed unbearable can eventually become the place where understanding finally begins. Years from now, you probably won't remember every conversation that once filled your days. Most words disappear faster than we expect. What lingers are the pauses between them, the moments when life became quiet enough for you to hear your own thoughts clearly. Those are the moments that reshape perspective without asking permission. Those are the moments that slowly redraw the boundaries between who you were and who you eventually became. In the end, silence is never just the absence of sound. It is the space where memory, time, and identity quietly negotiate with one another. It strips away the urgency of the present until only what truly mattered continues echoing. And when you finally look back after enough time has passed, you may discover that the loudest turning point in your life was never a speech, an argument, or a farewell. It was the moment everything became quiet. And you realized the silence hadn't come to erase your story. It had come to reveal it.